how long have we
Okay.
known each other? How long have we known each
Man, I
other?
want to say since maybe 98, 99.
It's
Uh,
been a
it's
it's
been
been
a
a long
minute.
time, right?
Yes, yes. I mean, we've known each other. We've seen our kids grow up and,
Yeah,
go to school and graduate and go to college and graduate, so, we've known each other for, at least, you know, I would say 22, 23, if not more years. I mean,
a
it's been
long
many
time, and
years.
it all started at Northeast Little League, right?
It did, brother. It did, man. And we still have so many friends from there. I mean that's a good thing, and us able to keep this, friendship going and relationship going. And just, and it's not every day we talk, but every day we do see each other, talk to each other. I just love that. That my first thing is how the kids doing. And I mean they're
Yeah,
adults now, right? But to us,
yeah.
they'll always be our kids. So that's a good thing, and I mean, makes it easier with FB and IG and all that stuff, nowadays with social media.
Yeah, it's and the last time we saw each other, it's usually once a year now, like at the Dodger game, at the
Yeah,
Dodger opening
exactly.
day.
Yeah, either that
And
or
so,
somebody's mutually having a party and we're both there.
yeah, that's how it goes. And the Northeast family, I feel like it's like even though we don't see each other all the time, it's like we've been through so much together,
Yes.
and it's like we haven't not seen each other. It's like we just like, oh dang, it's like I see you all the time. That's what it feels like.
Yeah, and part of it has to do with the emotions, with being with the game, right? And we there were emotions that were high, and everybody's doing great, and there's emotions where it's low, and that's based on team, right? We lost a championship, we won a championship, we
Yeah,
won a tournament, lots of tournament, whatever it is, but it's always emotional, when you hear and you see the kids, and just seeing them grow and all that, and like you said, I mean, we see each other maybe once, twice a year, if that, but
yeah,
that brief moment is always like we didn't, we it hasn't been a year since we saw each other or whatever.
yeah, yeah. So one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on the podcast, my whole podcast is about, inviting educators on and then explaining their experience with education, right? And we always talk about students with difficult behavior and stuff like that. But I know that you have a son in special education right now, right? Diego.
Correct. So my son Diego, he is 14 or 13, going on 14 now. He has spinal muscular atrophy, type 1, which is SMA. It's a neuromuscular disease. We found out about the disease when he was about 4.5 months.
Mhm.
Um, I see it kind of keeps breaking up. I don't know if it's you or me, but
It's yeah,
um,
yours keeps on breaking up a little bit,
oh, okay. You know what? I can
but
hear
it's okay.
somebody using the microwave, so it might be the microwave.
It's okay. You know what? Let's just go through it, and then we'll see what it looks like afterward. And now, let's just go. Tell your story.
That'll
Tell
work.
Diego's
So
story.
I'll tell Diego's story. So Diego was born, like any other of our kids. Everything was fine. He just wasn't meeting the milestones at birth. And my wife right away noticed. I was, thinking he's just lazy, keep giving him, tummy time and so forth. And eventually at 4.5 months, when we went for the 4-month checkup, the doctor noticed that he wasn't meeting those expectations, and she put him in to do a blood test, and one of the exams was called SMA, which we had never heard about. And my wife noticed the paperwork I didn't. So when we came home, she started doing all this research online, and she said like, I think maybe this is what he has because he shows all the symptoms.
Yeah.
Well, time passed, and about 5 months, we get called back into the hospital. No, it was funny. The next day, they call us to go back in to do another blood test because supposedly they put it in the wrong tube, which to
Yeah.
me was kind of weird. We're thinking that maybe they just want to verify the disease. So
Um,
we go back, I take him back, and about 2 weeks pass, they call us back in, and as most special education parents know, or parents know, when they give you the news, they kind of give it to you in a small room with a bunch of doctors, and they throw the news at you, and they let us know he has SMA, and he's not gonna live past 2 years old, and to take him
oh,
home, and hospice and love home and blah, blah, blah. So, we're devastated. We got to tell our other kids, we got to tell our families, blah, blah, blah. So time passes. We start doing our research. One day he stops breathing on us. Luckily, I was able to give him mouth to mouth, and he began to breathe again. Doctors came in, just trying to make it short, cut out the little details, but went to the hospital at the PQ. Dr. Johnson, I remember, he told us, hey,
Can we go? Can we
yeah,
go back to the mouth to mouth though?
mhm,
So
yes,
let's stop there for a second. So
okay,
he stopped breathing. He stops breathing, right? And you're
yes.
at home or at the hospital?
No, we're at home. So I had just taken my other two boys to school. I dropped them
A-
off at school.
And how old is he at this time when he stops breathing?
He's probably about 5.5 months.
Five and a half months.
Yeah, a little
Month.
under 5.5.
And you knew how to give him CPR at 5.5 months. Like you knew what you were doing.
Yes, and I gotta give the Army their props,
Your Army
because
background, yeah.
that's where I think that it helped me to keep my cool and not panic and, react to the situation. And at that
Yeah.
time when I had come back, I had already, of course, taken extra CPR classes and first aid, being a coach at Northeast, that's
Northeast.
part of the requirements, and I was actually working at a school setting as a PE teacher, part
Mhm.
time. So part of it, of course, was also the CPR first aid thing. So I think that
Yeah.
helped out a lot. But yeah, I was carrying him. My wife was already calling the hospital, like he wasn't
Wow.
breathing right. He stopped breathing on me. I pushed his stomach and I can hear air coming out, but nothing was coming back in. So I laid him down on a ottoman that we had, and just the first thing I did was clear his airway with a kind of like a blow in his mouth, and a
Mhm.
bunch of mucus came out of his nose.
Yeah.
And I did it again. I did it twice, and then after that, I could hear him cry again. By that time, the ambulance came, and after the hospital we go. So with his disease, it's pretty much it's kind of like ALS, the Lou Gehrig disease, but this one
Mhm.
attacks small kids. It's actually the number one infant killer, or it was. Now with medication is different, but at that time it used to be the number one infant killer under 2 years old. This
Yeah.
disease. It's rare, but that's a different story, I guess, regarding the disease, because I know we got to get
Yeah.
into the educational part.
No. I don't, just tell your story, man. Just tell the
Okay.
story. I'm just blown away, real quick, Alex. I'm just blown away that you were prepared for CPR like that. Like I feel like that's like a divine thing, like from God or something like that, where you were in the Army, you were trained, right? You were trained how to give CPR. You were part of Northeast Little League where you had to do CPR. You were a PE teacher where you had to do training on CPR, and here you are in a situation where all of these things, all these trainings came into play at this one moment where it mattered the most.
Yes, and the biggest thing is the consistency, right? The routine. We in
Mm-hmm.
baseball would say, keep it routine, keep it going, because it's the best practice. Same thing with this situation. I mean, if it wasn't because in the Army I did it for 4 years, being active duty, it was monthly training. When
Yeah.
I came back and I did training for working at a school setting or with kids, same thing. But the biggest thing was staying calm, because my wife also knows CPR, but unfortunately, she
Yeah.
started panicking and so forth. And, look, like you said, I think God works in mysterious ways. And I think that, he just had me in the right spot, because I had just taken the kid to school. So any, minutes later or, seconds later, I probably wouldn't even been home.
Yeah.
Um, but, so with his disease, what it is that our bodies have two neurons in our system that is called SMN1 and SMN2. And what happens is that one out of every 50 people have a recessive trait, or a mutated trait with the SMN1. So for example, we each of us have two of each, right? Two ones and two twos. Well, for us, we have one good one and apparently one bad one, both me and my wife. So we have a 25% chance that our kid will develop SMA.
Yeah.
So when Alex was born, we didn't know, because, thank
Yeah.
God he's healthy and everything is good. And so apparently we gave him, one of us gave him the SMN1. So he has that, right? So with Diego, what happened was that apparently with our DNA or whatever, we both gave him the recessive trait, or the mutated SMN1. So he didn't get that one. So sometimes you have enough SMN2s to overcome that missing one, but he only has two also, so he doesn't have enough. So he eventually that it's kind of weird to explain. So pretty much it's the messenger from your brain to your muscles. So what happens is that if you don't have enough of those to send the message to your muscles pretty much, if they're not being used, they're gonna die. So that's the part of the atrophy. So he doesn't have the muscles enough to say, when we get a noogie or we get mucus and we blow our nose, we sometimes swallow, spit it out, whatever it is. And he doesn't have that. So what happened with him is that he was getting sick like a regular cold, and because he started building mucus, he couldn't clear it. So that's what covered, blocked his airway. So when I gave him mouth to mouth, all that mucus came out of his nose.
Wow.
So I cleared his airway, but it was because he didn't have the muscle to do it himself.
Wow.
And so that's where he ended up at 6 months. He ended up getting trach.
Yeah.
So with that trach, for those that don't know, it's a little kind of like they poke a hole in his throat and they put a little tube that it's open. So he's on a ventilator, which helps him breathe. And when he gets another mucus or something like that, he does desat, which means his oxygen level is going low because there's no oxygen going in. But with that, we're able to suction it. So we go in with the little catheter and we suction the mucus out or whatever the plug is, and he's back to, airway open and, ventilator air coming in.
Yeah.
So, this happened, at 6 months, he was in a trach already. So we were at the hospital for about 2 straight months trying to learn to care for him. And, just the overall, changing trachs, suctioning, he actually threw a G tube, because he doesn't have the muscle to swallow food. So he has to eat through a G tube that's pretty much a little tube into his stomach, and it puts, food goes through there, and that's his feeding. And so we had to learn, how to live with SMA as a parent, and take care of him.
What? So when did they tell you he had SMA? Like how
They
old?
told us at about 5 months.
5 months.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they told us, their news was take him home, love him, care for him, because he's not going to live past 2.
Yeah.
So,
I remember around this time too, right? I remember around this time where I don't know if I talked to you directly, but I know that I heard that your son might not live past 1 or 2 years old. Like around this time. Like I remember hearing something like that. Like, and I was like, oh wow. And I don't know how to deal with we talk like I'm not the most sensitive guy, or like I'm not like, but like I didn't know how to approach you like oh dang, like that's it's hard. It was hard, and I don't know. I don't know, but I can imagine how devastating something like that was to hear. Like
and it was hard to hear, to tell, as a parent, as a dad, to tell you, your son's gonna die. And my first instinct was like, okay, what do you gotta take out of me to give to him so he can be okay? Like, don't tell me he's gonna die. Don't tell me that
that's your
that's
heart.
it.
That's your heart right there.
So,
You have the biggest heart,
they're
man.
telling us, thank you, sir. And they're telling us that no, that there's nothing they can do, blah, blah, blah. Just take him home and care for him. So at that time, we're both devastated. I just want to go home. I just want to, I want to get away from this nightmare. I'm just, emotionally drained. And, I remember we left the room and we're walking out, and we go to the car, we put him in his car seat, and I bawled, John. I bawled like I've never bawled before. Like
I bet.
I couldn't be strong, and
Yeah.
I cried and I bawled. And so, then the hardest part was telling our other kids, telling my parents, telling her parents. And, at that time, we didn't know any better. And we're telling him, they're telling us that he's going to die under 2 years old. So, my wife starts doing research. We're still trying to figure things out. I'm still like in a nightmare. in a daze. And about a couple of weeks after that is when he stops breathing. And we end up going to the hospital, and this is one of the biggest things that also has a big effect. So when we went to the hospital, emergency wise, ambulance wise, it took us to Huntington Memorial right here in Pasadena,
Yeah.
and it was our closest hospital, so we're there. So we're there, and I remember walking into the ER because my wife went with the ambulance. I followed them. I go into the ER, and it was the scariest thing to ever see. I mean, he has tubes all over the place,
Mm.
and I'm looking at it. I mean, he's small, he's
Yeah.
tiny, and I'm like, I'm like with my mouth propped, and I'm like, what the hell is going on here? Like, what is all this? So we're there, and they tell us, okay, you know what? After a couple of days, they tell us, okay, Kaiser wants him back to Kaiser because we're Kaiser
Yeah.
patients. And at that time, we were like, I don't want to go to Kaiser. They just told me that to take him home and,
Yeah.
pretty much
Yeah.
hospice. Like, I don't want to go home.
Yeah.
So we're like, what do we, if we stay here, what do we do? Your insurance doesn't cover it, so you have to pay. And we're like, okay, well, how much do we have to pay? Dude, when I saw the bill, it was about 60, at that time, it was about 66,000 per night.
Oh my
I
God.
was like, oh my God,
Oh
we're
my
never going to
God.
be able to. I mean, I was like, okay, we're going to Kaiser. We have no choice.
Oh my God.
But I was like 66,000 a night. They charged Kaiser over 120,000 for those 2 nights we were there at
Wow.
Huntington.
Wow.
And I was like, no wonder these doctors make so much money in minutes and cost so much. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's part of it. Our medical system, our health system is just so jacked for so many people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Either way, so we go to Kaiser, and at Kaiser, I remember Dr. Johnson, he's still intubated, he saw everything's okay now. And he tells us, you know what, he's okay now. You can take him home as he is, but this is going to happen again. Because of his disease, this is going to happen again. So we end up, talking to him, like, what are our options? Because if we go home and they're telling us that, there's nothing they can do,
Yeah.
what are we going to do? So he tells us, look, you can take him home. This is going to happen again. But the other option is a trach. And at first we were like, well, what's a trach? What does it work? How, what is it? So he explains it to us. He draws it to us and everything. And, Maria, my wife, right away says like, yeah, let's do it. Me, I was still kind of like, I don't know. What about if he's not happy? What about if he grows up and he has a trach and he's like, why did you do this to me? I'm thinking like,
Yeah.
outside, right? Like, I'm like,
Yeah.
and I don't know what it was, to be honest with you. I always say it was God that spoke to me. That I always say, like, God told me, you know what, this is your child, and you got to do what you got to do. This is an opportunity, because I feel like this. If God made the doctors and scientists and all these other people to be able to create ventilators and trachs and blah blah blah, to be able to keep somebody alive, who am I to say no?
Yep.
Right? So somehow or another, I agreed, and we went for it. So 2 months later, we're still in the hospital training and, learning this new method of life, SMA life.
Mhm.
And eventually we come home, and, now it's to navigate our normal life as we can, right? And I remember at that time I was still coaching, and I remember Coach Rick took over my team
Yeah.
while I was in the hospital.
Yeah.
And he took over my team to help me out while I was at the hospital with Diego. And I remember our other mutual friend, Danny, my compadre, he helped me with the kids, taking them to school, bringing them to the
It's good.
hospital, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of support. That's a
Cool.
blessing. And so we had the support. We come home, and, years pass, and now we're got to navigate the schooling. How we're going to do it for school, how is it going to work, blah, blah, blah. And that's when we start being a parent of a special needs.
What?
It opens up a lot of windows.
How old was he when he went to school?
He started at about I want to say he was like 6 years old when we 5 or 6, whenever it is for kindergarten. I want to say 5.
Okay, cool. Let's go back to where the doctor
Yeah,
says 1 year or 2 years. That's all he has, right?
yeah. Hmm.
What he gets he's one and he's
Hmm.
two now. How did
Right.
and he gets to three. What are you guys thinking then?
That we're blessed.
You're
That
blessed.
we're blessed. That we're glad that we decided to do the trade. That God will always have the last word, no matter what. I mean,
Mhm.
you can you can think but you don't know until because God is the one that's gonna have the last word, and that's what we thought. It's like what, He's with us, and honestly, it's every day He's with us. It's a blessed day for us.
A blessing. Yeah.
Yeah. So we never take it for granted. It literally made me sit down and focus on the little things, enjoy the little things more, and not worry about the things that are out of my control.
Yeah. And that
So
changed your whole way of life. Your whole way of
yes,
living changed, right?
man, did it ever? I mean,
Yeah.
like I said before, sometimes we take things for granted
Yeah.
and you don't realize it, but now, I mean, I love the outdoors. I love camping. I love blah blah blah, and I soak it in, dude. Every time I'm able to go out and our adventures have led us to a lot in the new community, that disability
Yeah.
community.
Yeah. You have
We
a whole community. I see your pictures. You guys go places, it's
Yeah, and that's the thing is we decided, what, we're not gonna let SMA, his disease, stop us from living.
yeah.
And we have to change our method, but we don't have to stop
Hmm.
doing it because so we've taken him camping, we've taken him to he's gone all the way to Canada,
Yeah.
Vancouver, Canada. He goes to Vegas all the time with us. He's gone
Yeah.
to Arizona. So I mean, he's probably traveled more than in a small short
Yeah.
time of years that I did when I was 14.
When I was
But
14, I went to Glendale and Burbank.
dude,
That's as far
I
as I
went to
went.
Sherman Oaks because that was my high school, and I used to
Yeah.
get bused there. But
That's
yeah,
funny.
man, I mean,
Hey, but
we
how
just
did you find that community? How did you find the community?
oh,
How did that?
so what happened was that when my wife was doing all this research for SMA,
Yeah.
there was this community was it was this organization was called Families of SMA.
Mhm.
And we hooked into that, and we started doing research and getting into knowing people, and building relationships and contacts and blah 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 about regarding wheelchairs and beds, and how do you accommodate everything in a wheelchair because he has so many medical equipment, and how do
Mhm.
you do it at home, and what do you do for this, and blah blah blah. So you build these relationships, you make contacts with other parents, that have SMA type 1 kids that are older too,
Yeah.
and it's funny because there's different types. There's type 1 all the way through type, I think it's 5 now. And it
Okay.
just depends on when the your SMA gets you. So the higher type you have is you have more mobility, more muscle usage, and so forth. So
Okay.
he has one of the worst ones, which is type 1,
One.
which takes effect when they're young.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it was a different world for us. It opened our eyes, and we contact this organization, and they actually have an annual conference every year that we try to attend, the ones that are here in the West area, because usually they'll go, to the East Coast, middle of the country, and
Yeah.
then here. But yeah, it opened up our doors to that, and it opened up our doors to the whole, you know, nursing, and and dealing with medical, and and all sorts of different disability programs, and what can we do here, and where can we go, and learning about what, even when we go out, is what are the restaurants accessible, are they wide enough for us to take them
Yeah.
in, little things like that, do they have
Stuff
handicap
that
parking?
yeah, we take that for granted. Like if you I don't even think about any of that, you
Well,
and
we
that's
didn't
something
either.
yeah, and you have to think about that all the time now.
Yeah, and that's something that really opened up. I mean, think about it alone, being a baseball coach. I mean, we love baseball. It's in our
Mhm.
DNA. We've always enjoyed it, and I wanted him to do it. So what do? Is I try to start a Challengers League at Northeast Little League.
I remember
Unfortunately,
that.
because it's kind of hidden. We didn't get
Yeah.
a lot of kids going up there, but at that time, Sergio, our president, let
Hmm.
him play with the T-ballers, and he was okay with him moving up to farm. But I was like, David, but it's not fair for the other kids. And my other side, I'm looking at him, I'm like, but it's not fair
Yeah.
for them that, because then it gets competitive, and it's like it's not gonna be fair if he comes and he hits a home run, like blah blah
Yeah.
blah, so stuff like that. So
Yeah.
you can don't hit it hard because Diego's on the outfield or stuff like that. So that's the kind of thing that I was thinking. So
Yeah.
we ended up finding out that there's another league called the Miracle League, and he plays there now. So actually, his
Yeah.
season just started. He's
That's
in his
awesome.
like 6 or 7 seasons. So it's all kids with
Yeah.
different disabilities, whether it's Down syndrome or CP or any other type of disability. But they're all kids with disabilities. The field is flat. It's just painted, field
Hmm.
bases and so forth. And we just play there, and actually we were excited because last year most of the time he was hitting out the tee. Last year he hit out live pitching. So
Oh,
one of the coaches pitches, and we were there with our wheelchair and our bat, and we were able to hit.
that's
So,
awesome.
so yeah, so we just find different methods to make his life as normal as we can,
Yeah.
and enjoy it. I mean,
How,
there's no. Mm.
how okay, so like there's parents, right? There's parents out there who have children with disabilities, and I feel like some of them aren't as active as you are. Some of them are not as proactive as you are
Mhm.
and your wife.
Yeah,
You guys are extremely proactive.
yeah, we try, and the reason why, and I was about to bring that up, is because when we were talking about the trick and everything, and having somebody with a disability, we're like, okay, because one of the biggest things that came out, especially with the neurologist doctors, were that quality of life. That was a big thing for us because
Hmm.
we were like, well, the quality is going to be based on what we give them, right?
Okay.
And they were
Yeah.
like, yeah, but you're going to have him in the room, and all he's going to know is that. And I'm like, no, like our plan is to have them live life the way our kids did. It might be different, and it might be not as as like we can't just get on a plane, let's go to Hawaii, or let's get on a plane, let's go to
Hmm.
somewhere in Mexico. I go, but we can take road trips. We can go camping.
Yeah.
We can go here and there. I go, it's just gonna be what we do. So one of the biggest thing was that the quality of life is we wanted to make sure that he wasn't just laying down in bed and not leaving a room, right? So
That's
that's why
big.
and that's a big thing. That's why
Hmm.
nowadays with technology, social media, and so forth, it's such a blessing, at least for us at this time, because we're able to do research in our home. We're
Yeah.
able to look for. We see other families like, hey, we tried this, and blah blah blah. And we're like, okay, well, let's try. We took a road trip to Canada last July.
Yeah.
We did a road trip all the way across. This is our second road trip, a long road trip. We went through to Reno, we did Virginia City, we did Carson City, all of the upper Nevada areas, and then drove back through Tahoe and then down through
That's
Sacramento
awesome.
and down. And then last July, we ended up going to Oregon. We stayed 4 days
Awesome.
there. Then we did Washington, then one day in, Vancouver, Canada, and it's
Yeah.
just up to us,
It's up to
like,
you.
yeah, what we're gonna do now. Don't get me wrong, we both work and we're both able to do it. Take time off, and financially we're okay, thank God.
Hmm.
But there's other parents that don't. Some parents decide, what, one of the parents is gonna stay home and take care of the child, and another one is gonna work. And if you don't have a great paying job, it's hard. It's a struggle. And for us, we've been blessed because we both work, like I said, and we were blessed because we had nurses for many years. I mean, we had
Yeah.
three amazing nurses for, one of them was for 5 years, the other two were 9 years each, overlapping morning shift and night shift and so forth, but both of them were with us for almost 10 years. We were blessed. And they moved on. One of them became an RN, and the other one moved to Kaiser. And we miss them. We wish we had them back, but that's how life is. And um, so now we're at the point where we don't have a nurse right now. So we're in the process of, hopefully the nursing company is able to get us a nurse. But we've been without a nurse for the last maybe what is it, like 7, 8 months? So now it's go work, come back home, and we take care of Diego. And I mean, that's normally what we do anyways. But now we have to be hands on all the time because we don't have a nurse. Before, the nurse was able to, suction him, change his underwear, give him a bath, the little things.
Yeah.
But now
Oh no.
we have to.
You? I
Okay,
hear
good.
you.
Good. Sorry about that.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. I don't know what happened.
I don't either.
And I don't know where we left off.
I forgot. I think we were talking
Oh,
about
oh,
quality of
we're
life.
the quality of life, right? We're talking about the quality of life and how you guys made a decision. You said, you know what, the quality of life depends on us. It doesn't depend on anything else, but what we make the quality of life to be.
Yeah.
And you were telling me about how, you're going on road trips. And I was gonna say, I think that Diego traveled more road trips. The farthest road trip I think I've ever been on is Vegas. That's that's the farthest,
That's everybody's spot.
right?
Yeah.
Hey, but Alex, so let's get to the school part. Let's get to the school part, right? So
So,
you go, he enrolls in school when he's 6 years old, you said, right?
yeah, about 5, 6 years old. So we enrolled him in his home school, is or Unified School District, is Alhambra. So
Yeah.
we enrolled him there, and they want to push him being in a special ed class, and we didn't want to do that because, especially Maria, didn't want to do that because cognitively he's fine. SMA does not affect your cognitive part of the body, but it's just his muscles. So we didn't want to keep him in a special ed where he wasn't going to be per se pushed, right? And so we had to do we had to get him tested through a regional center because they were assisting with us with this. It's an eye gaze. It's a machine where it reads. So the eye gaze, what it does, it speaks for him. So it's a little laptop-looking machine with at the bottom has like a laser thing that reads his eyes. So wherever his eyes and the monitor follows, it'll say that word. So we had to get him tested through that, and we had to get we had to get another teacher, a special ed teacher, test him and say like, okay, is he going to be able to, be in a normal school setting, or does he have to go to a special ed school? And no, we were able to get him luckily to Alhambra. So the only thing with him is because of his all of his equipment, Alhambra does not have a it wasn't that they had, but it was just really difficult to get him in the school bus to go to school because the nursing situation. So Alhambra required a nursing from Alhambra to be with him when he got picked up and dropped off at school. But those nurses are not trach certified. They're not, event certified and so forth. So, and they wouldn't let our home nurse at that time go because she wasn't a USD employee. So we were like, okay, well, let's do this. Let us take him. We'll drop him off and pick him up in our van, as long as he goes to school. So we started doing that. And they also offered homeschooling. So we decided, okay, maybe homeschooling is another option. So what we did is, because we're both off on Mondays, it was easier for us to drop them off on the days that we were off. And the other reason why was because in the morning we do his medical routine. It takes about an hour to do his medications. He has to be we have to do like an inhaler, like kids do inhalers with their little machine. Well, he has to go through a straight. So he has to do 2 different machines through the inhaler, and then he has to do his usual. It's called I forgot the name, but it's pretty much it's a vest that gets pumped with air, and it literally shakes him. And what it does, it loosens up the mucus in his chest. So when you suction him, it's easier for us to get whatever is on his lungs, right? So this vest pretty much is part of his medical routine in the morning. So it takes about an hour and a half to get everything done. So we wouldn't be able to get to school at the time of schooling. Otherwise, we would have to wake up like at 5 in the morning, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
our plan that we came up with was that he would be able to join those classes, and it was more for the social aspect of it than
Hmm.
the educational. But he does love science, so we would always try to pick the time when they were doing science. So we would go
Yeah.
drop him off, and I mean, the kids are great with him. The kids, even now he's in eighth
Yeah.
grade. He's gonna graduate and go to high school next year. But even the kid,
Yeah.
when I tell him, "Hey Diego, hi Diego," I mean, he knows these. Everybody knows Diego in school. They see him like, "Hey Diego," blah blah blah. So it's just more the social aspect of it than anything else.
Yeah.
But
That's awesome.
it did take time. It did take patience. Because
Yeah.
you have to open people's eyes into the possibilities, right? Because sometimes there's a lot of roadblocks, and
Hmm.
then they see it, you see Diego, and right away you think like, oh, poor kid, he's in a wheelchair, he's on a ventilator, he's on a this and that, like, he can. But honestly, is once they get to know who he is and how he is and his little attitude, they notice that it's a regular teenage boy now,
Yeah.
and he does grasp everything, and is we always say he's a chismoso because he's all over the
Yeah.
place, and he's like looking and listening. We're like, man, if this kid could talk, he would be
Yeah.
telling, he would throw us under the bus.
So,
Uh,
yeah. He has some stories, huh?
yeah, but I mean, it took some time to get where we're at.
Yeah.
Through the I believe it's called IEPs.
The
You know,
IEP. Yeah.
and getting
His services.
the teachers to accept them, and the teachers have been great. Believe me, I mean,
Yeah.
the teachers that he's had at school have been amazing, and then they incorporate him as soon as he comes in, and hey Diego, welcome to class, and we're doing this today, and blah blah blah, and they'll give us, they give us the laptop so you can do homework from home, and
Yeah.
he does they get him involved, and that's more than we can ask for, and like I said,
Yeah.
we take everything as a blessing. It's because we know there's parents that aren't able to take their kids to school, or or it's hard because the kids, I mean, my son Alex works as a behavioral therapist at school, and
Oh, wow.
it's tough because he tells me about this kid that's just the behavioral is really tough.
Bad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and to me, it's like what it's the kid is physically he's fine. It's just maybe there's some behavior issues there. Who knows if they're cognitively issues or if they're just behavior issues themselves. But it's there's so many. The umbrella is so huge in the special ed
Yeah,
department.
it is.
It's
You
hard
know,
to.
this is my third year in special education,
Mm,
right? So my job, I'm assistant principal, but I mainly deal with special education. At our school, there's not a generic assistant principal, so it's called an APAS, my position, but I also do like regular assistant principal stuff. But this is my first time with kids with special needs.
mm,
And at first, like they were saying, like I was real delicate with the kids,
mm,
right? Like I'm like, like I didn't know how. I've never worked with special ed like
right,
that. I go into the classrooms and I don't know what to do, what to say, and
yeah,
I treat them a little different. Like, oh, like watch out, but as time goes on, they're just like everybody else. Like I felt like they're just like they have attitudes. They have they have their own quirks. You treat them like regular, like they're just part of the school. You
yeah,
treat them just like that. And I didn't realize that. And now the kids that I work with, the class I work with sometimes, they're funny. They're just like regular kids, and I
mm,
didn't realize that.
yeah,
I didn't realize that. And I can see how teachers, when they get a student like Diego coming in, they're at first they're like, "Oh, what do I do?"
yeah,
And they realize, he's just like everybody else. And here he is, he's
yeah,
yeah.
it-
It took me a while. I would treat them like they're delicate, like real delicate. And
right,
I didn't know what to do.
yeah.
So
Yeah, and with Diego, it's funny because the physical part is obvious, right? And they tend to be like, okay, be careful, Diego, blah blah blah. And it's funny because we just did the eclipse, right? We just went through the eclipse, and she wanted to incorporate him with the classroom, and we went outside, and I go in the little pathway, and he's with his sunglasses, or the glasses, looking at the eclipse, and she goes, "Why don't you put him in the lawn area with all the other kids?" And I'm like, "Oh, I can." I go, "But I need help because his head bounces a lot under the wheelchair, right? Like he doesn't have a strap."
Yeah.
And it's a pretty little
Yeah.
down, right? So I'm like, okay, if you can help me hold his head while I kind of bring him down, then, she's like, sure. So she helped me, and we went to the lawn and everything. So, she sat on, and she was like, okay, great, but we're there, right? I mean, in case of an
Yeah.
emergency, trade, blah blah blah. But yeah, but I mean, even talking with my son Alex, being a behavioral therapist, he had I think it was a 7 or 8 year old, and he's like, yeah, he cusses, and he's like really
Mm,
and he's hitting people.
mm,
And I'm like, man, how do you do it? Because honestly, it's so different, right? Because with Diego, it's like physically he can't do anything. He doesn't really communicate talking wise, but with his machine. But he's most of the time he's like quiet, just looking around and blah blah blah.
yeah.
So I don't have to deal with such bad behavior,
Behavior.
or behavior issues. And Alex is like, yeah, he goes, sometimes he's like trying to hit me, and I'm like, okay, I forget the kid's name, right? But he's like, okay, that's not nice. You're gonna continue. And just the issues that he has to deal with, I'm like, man, like, I don't know if I can
That's
do it, right? Because I'm thinking,
yeah.
and it's tough.
That's rough.
And it's tough. I mean, it's tough alone for teachers, honestly. Not
Yeah.
especially nowadays. It's so much uh, harder because you get questioned about everything, social media has its goods and its bads, and I'm sure kids, oh, I read this and it's not true and blah blah blah, and then you have attitude and this and that, so I know it's hard, and I can't even say like, oh, I know how it, I mean, I'm assuming, that it's
Yeah.
I mean, it is a tough job, but I can't even assume myself being in that position and try to deal with so many different people, right? I mean, you're dealing with individuals,
Yeah.
and different,
It's rough.
yeah, different behaviorals, different, and not only the behavioral and say that the sassiness maybe or the attitude or whatever it is, but then you got to deal with each student mentally is on a different level. You have somebody that's a genius, and he's pushing you for you to push him, and then you have a child that is barely trying to work hard
Can't
and
read.
trying to get there. Yeah,
Can't read. Yeah.
and that's a hard part. And I couldn't even imagine being with 30,
You
20
know.
kids, and
Yes. Hats off to teachers. Teachers are amazing, and they deal with a tremendous amount of things. And like you had just said, you got a kid in that can't read, and then you got a kid that could read chapter books, and they're in like second grade, and they're reading like sixth grade level. And so you got this, and then you got students with disability in the classroom as well, right? You got IEP students with disability, you got IEP students in the classroom, right? You got a range of abilities in the classroom, and then you got kids who have a good support system, right? They were raised with maybe like a strong mother, a strong father. They have grandparents. They go to after school sports like Northeast Little League, right? They go and play baseball. They go to church on Sundays, right? They go to youth group, right? They're doing their first communion, right? So they have this strong support system. And then you got these kids who don't have a support system, who live in a shelter, who might be living in a car, who might be living in an apartment with like 8 people, one restroom, and and they don't eat that well, and so you got all of that in one classroom. And you know it's extremely difficult. I know I taught for 18 years. I know how difficult it is. And so one of my goals through this whole podcast, and through my TikToks or my Instagram posts, is just to help, right? Like, I don't have all the answers. But all I want to do is help, right? I post videos like, hey, this might help for you. This is what I think. I hope this helps out. And I just keep pumping those videos. I keep pumping them, keep pumping them, keep pumping them. And I get it. Some of the things that I say, I get criticized for. Like, oh, you said that, and then maybe you're out of touch. You're administrator, you're out of touch. You don't know what's going on, or I get criticized for certain things, and that's fine. I'm okay with being criticized. Let me get criticized. But if I can help somebody, if I can help a teacher that's struggling, if I can help an administrator struggling, if I can help a counselor or whoever I can help, a parent, if I get a parent on here with a student with disability, you know, this to me, this is unique opportunity, right? Like you're here, you're a parent, right? You're a parent with a student with a disability that, you know, not too many people have. And your story could help out so many people, you know? To me, that's what it's all about.
And you know
It's
what?
about help. It's
It's
about
true.
help.
Because that's how we learn, right? We learn through reaching out to the organization with SMA called Cure SMA now, and learning from other parents, and other parents learn from us, and reaching out, and I mean, social media makes it so much easier now. I mean, I can't even imagine back, 20, 30 years when you didn't have this ability to contact somebody like this and get information. I mean, I
Yeah.
can't even, imagine being where I'm at with Diego and not being able to find out, okay, what I do for this, what I do for that, where can I go where it's accessible for him?
Yeah.
Now, I open a computer and I'm like, I can get a hotel that's accessible. I can get a place that's accessible. I can go to eat and know that it's accessible. I mean, back then, I couldn't even imagine, and that's only us with, the wheelchair and our disability. I mean, I can't
Yeah.
imagine other parents that have to deal with, the kids that have behavioral issues, and go to a restaurant and trying to, have a nice dinner, not being able to, or kids who are autistic, in the
Yeah.
spectrum, and not being able to, communicate or whatever. But they look, you look at them, they look physically, they look normal, but they're not.
Yeah.
It's tough, man. It's a tough world, but podcasts like this, I think, hopefully will open eyes, and open minds, to bigger things. And like you said, you're okay being criticized, but it's okay because it comes with learning new things. I mean,
Yeah.
only because you don't agree with certain things doesn't necessarily mean. I mean, baseball alone, right? We might not agree with certain people of the whole pitching with the car, but you learn from it. Certain things to
Yeah.
learn from.
We do.
Like,
Sometimes,
okay,
even though we might not agree with it, we're like, wait, well, that kind of worked though.
yeah,
That
right.
kind of worked a little
Yeah,
bit.
and and that's how we are. We learn as we go. I remember our first trip, and we were like, okay, do we have this? Do we? I mean, we packed the van like we were
Yeah.
moving out, bro. So we
Yeah.
go to the hotel, and it's like box after box, I'm unloading everything, and I'm like, man, like we brought a lot of. So now we're down to equipment with a suitcase. We bought a suitcase with wheels, and we have a tag that says medical equipment on there. Be careful,
That's it.
And we work through it as we go, and learning from other parents, and so forth. Even equipment alone, small little things. When we first got his first wheelchair would not fold down like flat. It was just
Mm,
a seat. So for us to change this, luckily it was when he was younger. We were still able to carry him wherever. We would have to take him to a bathroom or wherever in the van and lay him down and change his diaper and then put him back in the wheelchair and blah, blah, blah. And then we learned about this wheelchair that, it reclines all the way pretty much flat. And it's easier for us to change the diaper wherever we go. Go to a bathroom, use a wheelchair without the transfer, blah, blah, blah. It has, so it's a lot of little things, but the biggest thing is, being able to not be, I would say don't get frustrated. I think the
yeah.
biggest thing is getting frustrated and kind of like, I give up, I'm tired, I'm done. Yeah, it's frustrating. Yeah, it's tiring, but you gotta count your blessings, and you gotta be. And at the end, this is how I see it. I chose this. We chose for Diego to have a trach and for Diego to have this equipment. And every time there's days or nights when I'm frustrated, I want to yell, I want to go and hit the punching bag. I just want to let it out. But then which sometimes I do, but sometimes I sit back and I'm like, you know what, like, why am I being like, this is what I chose, this is where I wanted. So suck it,
Yeah.
drive on, right? Like,
Check it out. Yeah.
this is what God gave me, and this is what we chose. And it's funny that people say, oh, God gives, the toughest tasks to, the toughest soldiers. And I don't feel like that. I feel like God is giving me the opportunity to be a good parent, a
There
better.
you go.
And that's how I see it. It's like, it's not about, because I was hard with my other kids, I was tough with them, and I'm sure that they, have like my dad was an ass and blah blah blah.
Resentment, yeah, some
You know,
resentment.
but with Diego, I've been different, and everybody sees it. I'm so different with Diego, but at the same token, I see it like what it's maybe it's a way for God to tell me, we need to kind of chill, don't be so rough, don't be so tough, and
Mhm.
blah blah blah, and and take things slower. Honestly, it's like
Yeah.
we're in this world where we gotta move here, we gotta do this, and we gotta do that. Now, I mean, it's like, what am I rushing it for? Like, if it's an emergency, I get it, but
Yeah.
there's no need for me to, hurry up, pack your bags, let's go, let's go, or like what?
Uh,
I mean, there's so much other things, to worry about that are worse horrible. I mean, honestly, John, I was having a conversation with my other friends, and I was saying, like, man, sometimes I just feel frustrated, like, like I just want to. Sometimes I just want to cry. Like I'm just like, man,
yeah.
I'm tired. I went to work. Diego had a bad night, and I've been up all night with him, and I'm just tired. And now I got to do like you get frustrated, And
Yeah.
but then I think like, man, what am I complaining about? Like there's kids. Prime example, Gaza. There's kids that are going hungry or eating very little, or parents might not be there, or or bombings going down the street, or let alone here. I mean, I was seeing the news that last week there was a father, a 51-year-old father that was 24 years in the military, retired, just retired not that long ago. He got shot on a drive-by shooting, being between two guys. He got
Wow.
when I'm thinking like, man, like life could be so much worse. So I can't complain. I mean, I'm blessed to be able to, be here and take care of my son, and be able to have him in baseball. And, as a matter of fact, he went to his first, not this first Dodger, but he went to his Dodger game on the next day on Friday after
Hmm.
opening day. We went to go see the drone show, and I'm blessed, and I can't, I can't complain, because there's no need for me to complain. I
Yeah.
mean, you know, it's life is gonna be hard no matter what.
That's right. Sounds like you have an amazing attitude with the situation that you're in right now. Now, Alex, we're gonna go ahead and get close to the end of the podcast, but if you could give maybe one or two tips to a parent that has a student with disability, what would you say to these parents that are struggling, with a student, that maybe their child, maybe they're upset, maybe they're questioning why it happened to them, maybe they're, feeling depressed.
Right.
What kind of advice would you give to
I
a
think
parent like that?
I think number one is take a step back and see it through your kid's eyes. Right? Like sometimes we're just focused on our situation, that we gotta kind of see it in Diego's eyes. And prime example, this happened on Friday when we went to the Dodger game. We had a very hard time going into the security.
That-
The
yeah.
security was just, sorry to say it, but he was just a butthole. I don't know if he had a bad day or whatever, but he made us take everything out of the wheelchair so he can pat down and then put everything back. So I complained, I did my complaint, blah blah blah. But my kids, my other two kids were really like, oh, why you? And I didn't say anything. So when we were leaving, back to our seats, they were like, "God, didn't that bother you?" But I go, honestly, it does bother me. But what am I gonna win out of arguing at that time? I go, my biggest thing is I don't want Diego to see me get frustrated because of
Yeah.
this. Because then he
Yeah.
he might feel like, well, this is my fault because it's my wheelchair. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
take a
Yeah.
step back, look at it through your kids. Like you don't necessarily always have to
Yeah.
focus just on what you want, but what does he want? Maybe he doesn't. When we go out, we ask Diego, "Do you want to go to a movie? Do you want to go here? Do you want to do that? Blah blah blah. Or what movies do you want?" Like incorporate him or her in the decisions you're gonna make.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing too is sometimes take time for you. I
Yeah.
don't always do it, but I take my time. I go to opening day because that's our day, right? Like I know I'm gonna see my friends there. I know
Yeah.
I'm gonna see part of my support system there. They're gonna ask for the family and blah blah blah. But I'm there with my friends, with loved ones.
Hmm.
I'll go out and have a dinner date with the guys. Like, hey, we're gonna meet together. Let's go eat somewhere. Blah blah blah. Okay, let's go and have one beer and have drinks, or have food and blah blah blah. But you have
Yeah.
to have your time for yourself too. You can't always just be, there, and not, take care of you. Same thing with my wife. My wife will go out with her friends, have dinner. I'll see with Diego, and vice versa. Or we've gone to where, hey, I'm gonna go get a massage. Okay, go. Hey, I booked you on a massage. You go now. And I'm like, okay, so I'll
Hmm.
go, right? So you do have to take care for yourself, because if you don't, it gets to be too much that
Yeah.
you tend to lose the focus, and you have to kind of take a step back, take care of yourself, see it through your kids' eyes, and refocus. So
Yeah.
those two will probably be the biggest things that I would give them.
Well, Alex, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I greatly appreciate it. Your insights are greatly valued, and I look forward to putting this podcast out.
I
It's
can't
gonna
wait to
be
see
it was
you, brother. And thank you for putting these things together. I mean, it does help. I love hearing your podcast when you're talking about it, or even when you're recording yourself at school, walking around, doing your rounds. And I
yeah,
love it, bro, because we need teachers to see that. We need educators to see that, and kids nowadays are on their phone. They see it, and then they get to see
yeah,
the other side of not just being an educator, right? And then that role,
yeah.
but, they see a human being, and they
That's
see
right.
that you want more for them, and what you do is for them, because you're not doing it for yourself. Yeah, you're getting a paycheck, but you could easily just go in there. We've seen it. Somebody opens a book. Okay, read page 52 and leave them there,
And
right?
that's it.
I mean,
Yeah,
you're pushing this kids, and that's love, bro. I love it. I love watching the
appreciate that.
podcast, and I love watching your videos, and keep it going, brother. You're a big
Appreciate that.
inspiration to a lot of us.